in a recession, it's particularly important to have sustained public spending. Let me explain why that is. Let's say your option is to take a tax dollar and spend it, or to leave it with a private individual. What happens to private dollars in an economic recession? Well, the first thing that happens is a lot of private dollars get saved. How many of y'all have slowed your spending and are saving more money? Okay. So a lot of private dollars get saved. They don't have the immediate stimulative effect of spending. And a lot of tax dollars are not paid by Texans. We export a lot of our tax burden to people who buy our goods and services or oil and gas. Contrast that with public spending. If I take that dollar, it's going to get spent. And it's going to get spent locally and have a stimulative effect. And so you see the numbers that are up there. These are standard economic numbers from mainstream economists that you come out ahead in this recession if you will sustain your public spending. Now, it's very important to understand that a lot of that coming out ahead is private economic activity. Because when I talked to this group just 2 hours ago of over 400 superintendents, before I talked, they had their sponsors talk. Who were they? Architects, furniture salesmen, transportation providers. In other words, private sector people. And so 88 cents of the economic activity is in the private sector. So that it turns out that cutting spending hurts the state economy more than increasing taxes in a recession, especially if you increase taxes in a smart way and you're taking it from people with higher incomes. Now, I think we all have a sense that the federal deficit is out of control. And so what we're trying to wrap our minds around, understanding what it's responsible to do in a recession versus what we need to do long term to have a sustainable fiscal condition, right? Well, here's the thing. When you look at the current projections of our federal deficit, there's a large component of that that's not from spending at all, it's from reduced tax collections. It's from the fact that we're projecting lower tax collections because we're in a crummy economy. You turn that economy around in the short run, and you're going to automatically cut that deficit as you move out from increased tax collections. That's one of the issues. There are other issues. So we're going to have to address a second issue, is that federal taxes have been falling. A huge portion of our deficit would be cut if we simply paid the taxes we paid when President Eisenhower was in office. So what we have on the federal deficit are some real revenue problems that we're going to have to address. Then in addition, we've got a health care cost problem. We have got to do something that begins to bend the curve on the growth of health care costs. Actually, Social Security, which many of you may be worried about, is fairly easily fixed. When you look at the long-term projections, the Social Security deficit can be fairly easily fixed. The big problem with the long-term deficit is the Medicaid, Medicare issues, and that requires bending the curve on health care costs. So, what I want to draw a distinction between is what is our short-term response at the state level versus some of the longer-term issues at the federal level. And the short-term response at the state level can't be just to balance our budget with cuts. What we have to do is figure out how to put some additional revenue into the system. We have to have a balanced approach. We're going to have some painful cuts, but we're also going to need some new revenue. Once we get out of this recession, in the long term, we're going to have to address federal sustainability. So, if we were going to do new revenue, where would it come from? What would it look like? And I'm just going to run you through this fairly rapidly, and then we can go back and talk about any of it that interests you. So let's start. Let's start with the easy money. For every percent of economic growth, we'll get about $800 million in new tax collections. So some of our budget will be done through economic growth. We're talking about 44 months ahead. 44 months is a long time, and hopefully the economy is going to look better. Second, we're going to have to do some smoke and mirrors accounting. For example, if I'm supposed to pay you on August 31st, it's on this biennium's books. If I bump that and pay you on September 1st, it's on the next biennium's books. We're going to have to do some smoke and mirrors accounting. Fortunately, we took some money we had last time and undid some smoke and mirrors accounting that we had done in 2003, and so fortunately it's available again. So that's the easy money.